Have you ever planned your own child's funeral in your head for 3 agonizing days? I stared at my phone, utterly convinced that my 2 boys were dead in a ditch somewhere in Florida. I am 52 years old, and I spent those 3 days unable to eat, sleep, or breathe, waiting for 2 police officers to knock on my door and deliver the worst news a parent can hear. But the truth was so much worse than a car crash. My sons weren't dead. They were just ignoring my calls on purpose. And I flew over 1,000 miles only to have them look me dead in the eye, surrounded by a party I wasn't invited to, and tell me my love was a disease. Welcome to a father's raw revenge. Get comfortable. And keep this in mind as you listen. The people in this story had every single opportunity to do the right thing. They simply chose the exact opposite. Drop a like and leave a comment telling me where you are watching from. Trust me, you are going to want to stick around for this one. My name is James Mitchell. I run Precision Biomed out of the Chicago suburbs, a company that calibrates and repairs the machines that hospitals absolutely need to function. MRI machines, surgical lasers, all that equipment that beeps and hums and keeps people alive. I built this business with my bare hands and my own sweat. And I built it so my boys would never know what it feels like to go without. My own father did not get that chance. He deployed with the military when I was 7 years old and never came back. Nobody taught me how to throw a baseball. Nobody sat with me to tell me I mattered. So, when Alex was born, and then Danny 2 years later, I made a promise in that hospital hallway. These boys will never know that emptiness. I kept that promise for 25 years. Until one Tuesday, in late May, when that promise turned into the worst 3 days of my life. It all started with a boring, official letter. The kind you glance at over your morning coffee and forget by lunch. It was a lease renewal notice requiring the guarantor's verification. It was for Alex's apartment, a gorgeous high-rise in downtown Miami, with a wraparound balcony overlooking Biscayne Bay. I co-signed that lease 2 years ago when he landed his first serious job down there. I was the safety net. My name, my excellent credit score, my signature, holding the whole thing up like a steel beam nobody sees. The renewal was due in 5 days. Before I signed it, I just needed a quick answer from Alex regarding a detail about his income that the property manager wanted to clarify. Something simple. A 30-second phone call at most. I called him from my office, leaning back in my chair, half watching a technician recalibrate an ultrasound probe through the glass. Voicemail. Well, he was probably in a meeting. I left a message. Hey, son. It's Dad. I have the lease renewal papers here. I just need to verify something with you before I sign. Call me when you get a chance. Nothing major. I went back to work. The next afternoon, nothing. I called again. Voicemail again. I will admit, that is when the first shadow of unease crept in. I know Alex sometimes takes a while to text back, but he never ignores me for a whole day. Never. So, I called Danny, thinking he would know where his brother was. Maybe they were hanging out, grabbing food at a Cuban spot down by the port. Voicemail, both of them. On the same day, I told myself it was nothing. The boys are busy. They forget. I left another message, trying to keep my voice light. Boys, I really need you to pick up. The deadline for Alex's apartment is coming up. Please call me back. That night at dinner, my wife Sarah noticed something was off. She has known me for 28 years. She can read a change in my face before I even feel it myself. You've barely touched the casserole the neighbor brought over. She said, What is wrong? The boys aren't answering. I replied, Neither of them. Since yesterday, she brushed it off. They are busy. James, they are grown men. She was right. I knew she was right. So why did my stomach feel like it was tied in a knot? By the third day, it stopped being annoying and became downright terrifying. The lease deadline was only 48 hours away. I called Alex 7 times that day. 7. I called Danny 5 times. Every single call went straight to voicemail. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw highway pileups. I saw Florida highway patrolmen standing on my porch with their hats in their hands. I swear to God. I could hear the words before they even spoke them. You already lost a father once. James, you know exactly how fast this world can snatch someone away. You know how it happens silent, sudden, with no warning. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed at 1 a.m, phone in hand, my thumb hovering over Alex's name for the 100th time. Sarah sat up behind me. James, come to bed. Something is wrong. Sarah. My voice cracked in a way I had not heard since my own father's memorial service. 3 days. Neither of them. That is not being busy. That is not normal. Maybe they are together. Maybe both their phones died. For 3 days straight, I turned to look at her. And I saw that same cold dread drop right into her stomach. Pack a bag. I told her, we are going down there. Something is wrong. I can feel it. She didn't argue. That is what 28 years of marriage looks like. You learn which battles to fight and when to just get up and pack the bag. We booked the first flight out the next morning. I remember sitting at the boarding gate, watching the Chicago skyline shrink through the window, thinking this could either be the most foolish overreaction of my life or the trip that saves my children's lives. I did not know which. Sarah held my hand the entire flight. We barely spoke. What do you say I hope our boys aren't dead isn't exactly great small talk when the flight attendant is handing out pretzels. I was running every macabre scenario through my head. At 30,000 feet, a car crash on Interstate 95. A break-in at the apartment. Danny was always reckless on that motorcycle. He swore he had sold. I imagined every version of tragedy a parent's brain can invent, and absolutely none of it prepared me for what was actually waiting for us behind that door. We landed in Miami just after 2 p.m. The heat hit us like a brick wall stepping out of the airport that thick. Humid Florida heat that people from the Midwest never really get used to. I rented an SUV, tossed our single suitcase in the back, and we drove toward downtown. The entire way, Sarah kept repeating the same mantra, trying to convince herself, they are fine. I am sure they are fine. James, there is going to be some boring explanation. Then why won't they answer the phone? I replied, gripping the steering wheel way too hard. 3 days. Sarah. 14 calls between the two of us. Not a single text message. She stayed quiet. I think a part of her knew it too. The boring explanation was not what was waiting for us on the other side of that building. Alex's high-rise stood against the Miami skyline like something out of a magazine. Glass. Steel. 30 floors of the kind of luxury that makes a guy from Chicago feel a little out of place in his rental car. We pulled up to the valet. And even that felt wrong, leaving a standard SUV between Porsches and Mercedes-Benzes. Like we were trespassing in someone else's life. We rode the elevator up to the 14th floor in total silence. My hand was shaking when I raised it to knock. 25 years of being a father, and I was standing in front of my own son's door, feeling like a man about to identify a body, and then I heard it. Music. Laughter. Loud. Easy. Celebratory laughter. The kind of laughter you never hear in hospitals or morgues. There were balloons taped near the doorframe, swaying gently whenever someone walked past an air vent. That is not the sound of tragedy, I thought, and for half a second, the relief washed over me so intensely my knees almost buckled. Thank God. Thank God they are okay. I knocked. The music lowered. Footsteps approached. The deadbolt clicked, and the door swung open to reveal my oldest son. Alex. He had a drink in his hand, and a wide smile that instantly froze into a mix of surprise and something much colder, something I had not seen since he was a teenager, getting caught sneaking in past curfew. That smile didn't stay confused for long. It soured completely. And in that half second before he opened his mouth, in a part of me, the part that had spent 3 sleepless nights terrified my son was dying somewhere, just knew. I hadn't flown over 1,000 miles to save my boys from a tragedy. I had flown right into an ambush I never saw coming. Have you ever had a moment where your entire body knows something terrible is about to happen half a second before your brain processes it? That is exactly where I was. 14th floor, Miami. Me hand still hovering near the door frame, like I could push the moment back and undo it. Alex stood there, his glass sweating in his hand, and his expression curdled like milk left out in the Florida sun. What are you guys doing here? Not Dad. Not Mom. Not even. Everything is fine. Just, what are you guys doing here? Times like we were door-to-door salesmen he had to brush off. I tried to keep my voice steady. Even though my chest was tightening, I have been calling you. I said, you didn't answer. I thought something happened to you. Sarah stepped forward, her hands over her mouth. And for a second, I saw 25 years of motherhood spill out all at once. Oh, thank God. She breathed out. Honey, are you okay? We have been calling for 3 days. We were sick with worry. We thought something terrible. Alex cut her off before she could finish. He rolled his eyes. Not a small flinch. A full, dramatic, exhausted eye roll. The kind of look a teenager gives when you ask them to take out the trash. We didn't answer because we didn't want to talk to you, he said, his voice flat, sharp, and final. Stop calling us. We have our own lives. You are suffocating us. Stay in yours. 4 words. I have been hit by a lot of things in my life. A garage door, a runaway MRI cart, the absence of a father for 45 years. Nothing hit me as hard as those words did. I just stood there in the hallway, the balloons bobbing gently behind my son's head, as if the whole building was mocking me. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. 25 years. Every baseball game. Every scraped knee. Every fever at 2 a.m. And this was the return on investment. Before I could find my voice, a young woman stepped up next to Alex. Young. Pretty. Holding a glass of something pink and bubbly. Her entire posture radiated a kind of bored arrogance I had only ever seen on reality television. Honestly, she said, crossing her arms, it is way too much. You guys never stop hovering. Sarah blinked, completely lost. I am sorry. Who are you? The girl's smile widened. She raised her left hand, slow and deliberate, like presenting evidence in a courtroom. A diamond ring caught the hallway light and flashed right in our faces. I am Chloe, she said, his fiancée. And today is our engagement party, which you are ruining by showing up uninvited. Uninvited. Ruining. I heard the words, but it took a second for them to fully register. It was like my brain refused to accept a package it knew would hurt too much to open. Our son was engaged, and we were finding out while standing in a hallway, being told we were ruining the celebration. 28 years of marriage. And I had never seen Sarah make that face. She looked like someone had reached directly into her chest with bare hands. I want to pause here, because this is the part where people who have never lived through something like this will say, James, just walk away. Don't make a scene. And believe me, a part of my brain was already in the elevator. But another part, the father who flew over 1,000 miles because he truly believed his children were in danger, needed to understand. How does a father go from, he's calling because he loves us to, he's suffocating us without a single conversation in between? I found out very quickly, and this was the exact moment I broke. I told Sarah this later that night on the plane. It wasn't the insults or the arrogance. or even the smug little smile on his fiance's face. It was knowing they saw my name on the screen. They saw me calling. They knew I was sick with worry. And they deliberately chose to let me suffer for 3 days straight. That is not independence. That is pure cruelty to the sender. But that realization came later, right there in the hallway. I just had a dry mouth and a wife crumbling beside me. Beneath her pain, though, was something else. Something Sarah hadn't even said out loud yet. But I knew exactly what she was thinking, because I was thinking it too. Back home in Chicago, sitting safely in our wall safe, was her great-grandmother's vintage ring from Poland. For 20 years, she had kept it polished, wrapped in the same faded blue cloth. Dreaming of the day she would slip it onto the finger of the woman our son chose. Instead, she was standing in a hallway in Miami, being treated like a trespasser at a party, celebrating a ring that wasn't even hers. Right then, Danny appeared in the doorway, holding a tray that smelled of roast pork and fried plantains. He let out a loud groan when he saw us. A literal groan. Like we were a chore he thought he had already finished. Seriously, you couldn't just let us have this one day in peace. I felt something harden inside my chest. The fear was morphing into something else. I don't know if it was anger yet. Maybe it was just crystal clear clarity. So, I said, keeping my voice incredibly steady. I didn't come to ruin anything. The property manager sent an urgent notice. The lease renewal deadline is tomorrow. Since I am the primary guarantor, I needed to verify a detail before signing so you wouldn't lose the apartment. Danny let out a short, mocking laugh. There was no humor in it, just thinly veiled disgust. Oh, here we go again with the savior complex. He shook his head slowly, like he was explaining something to a toddler instead of the man who had been paying his rent. You think because you signed a stupid piece of paper you have the right to track our every move. This is exactly why we pick colleges thousands of miles away. We literally chose our schools just to get away from your constant, suffocating help. Thousands of miles away on purpose. To get away from me. I flew over 1,000 miles because I love them too much to sit still. They moved over 1,000 miles away because they loved me too little to stay close. Alex nodded. Looking like his younger brother had just delivered a TED Talk, he leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, drink still in hand. Exactly. You always use money to fix things, to control us, and make yourself feel important. Well, I pay my own rent now with my own job. I don't need you hovering around acting like a hero. He paused. And here comes the part that truly ripped something open in my chest. We saw your calls. We decided not to answer on purpose. We wanted to see how long it would take for you to take the hint and stay in your lane. On purpose. They weren't busy. Their phones didn't die. On purpose. For 3 days. I stayed awake picturing police officers and body bags, while my sons sat in a luxury apartment, watched my name light up their screens, and consciously decided to let their own father suffer just to teach him a lesson. Chloe flipped her hair back, clearly bored with the whole interaction. Yeah, she said. We are trying to celebrate our future with people who actually matter. We don't need your outdated drama here. Please leave. Please leave. Spoken at my own son's door, by a woman I had met exactly 4 minutes ago. I want you to understand something about me, because it is crucial to everything that happens next. I did not yell. I have thought about that moment a lot since then, whether I should have raised my voice, whether some part of them needed to see me break, just like they had just broken their mother. But that is not who I am. My own father never got the chance to teach me how to handle a moment like this. I had to learn it on my own. I just looked at the 2 boys I had poured my entire life into. The boys I swore to protect from the second I held them, because I knew exactly how it felt to grow up without that protection. They were standing there, living a lifestyle that my signature and my credit had built. The apartment, the cars, all the safety nets beneath their feet, They were completely blind to it all, treating their own mother like dirt to be swept off the welcome mat. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply reached out, gently took the hand of my sobbing wife, and turned toward the elevator behind us. I heard Chloe mutter something to Alex. I didn't catch the words, but the tone told me everything I needed to know. They wanted to be left alone. And tomorrow, they were going to get exactly what they asked for. The elevator ride down felt longer than the entire flight. Sarah stood beside me in total silence, staring at the mirrored doors, tears streaming down her face without making a single sound. I had never seen her cry like that. Silent, hollow, like something inside of her had simply powered down. We didn't speak in the lobby. We didn't speak on the drive back to the airport. She finally broke the silence near the departure ramp, staring out at the water as if it held an answer. 20 years, she said softly. I kept that ring polished for 20 years. James. I didn't ask what ring. I knew. I used to picture the day I would give it to whoever he chose. She continued, her voice breaking. I imagined telling her the story. My great-grandmother coming over from Poland with nothing but that ring sewn into the lining of her coat. Not this. Being told I was ruining a party I didn't even know existed. What do you even say to that? I just squeezed her hand and held it the rest of the way. The flight back to Chicago was the quietest 2 hours of my life. Sarah stared out the window the entire time, watching Florida disappear beneath the clouds, wiping away a tear every few minutes. Somewhere over Georgia, staring at the back of the seat in front of me, something shifted inside my chest. It was quiet, but it was permanent. I gave them everything I never had. Every game, every scraped knee, every ounce of protection a fatherless boy dreams of giving his own kids. And somehow, by giving them everything, I raised two men who looked at me like the villain in their story. By the time we landed at O'Hare, something inside me had made a decision, even if I didn't have the words for it yet. The man who walked off that plane was not the same man who had boarded it, terrified for his children's lives. That man was gone. And what was left of him was about to make a phone call his sons would remember for the rest of their lives. They wanted me to leave them alone. So I left them alone. Legally, financially, and completely alone. And by the time they realized what that actually meant, it was way too late to undo it. You know what nobody tells you about heartbreak? It doesn't announce itself right away. It waits. It lets you walk inside your own house first. It lets you drop your bags. It lets you think, for one merciful second, that maybe the worst is over. And then it kicks your wife's legs right out from under her. We got back to our house in the Chicago suburbs just after 10 at night. The silence in the house hit us differently. Sarah barely made it 2 steps past the entryway before her knees gave out. She collapsed right there on the living room rug, the one her mother bought us, and she wept. She cried the way you cry when someone dies. The real kind of crying, the kind that gets ripped out from underneath your ribs. I sat on the floor with her. I didn't say anything smart. I didn't try to fix it. I just held her while she sobbed into my shoulder. And I finally let myself ask the question that had been haunting me since we left Miami. Where did we go wrong? I gave them everything I never had. I was present for every moment. I was the father I always prayed for. And somehow, by doing all of that, I turned them into people who see me as the enemy. Sarah lifted her head, her eyes red and swollen. And she said the only thing that made sense that night, no, James, you didn't turn them into anything. They did that themselves. You just gave them a life they never had to work for. And people who never have to work for anything never learn how to value it. I held her on that floor until almost midnight. And at some point, I made a promise to myself. The only person who had stood by me in every single version of my life was the woman shaking in my arms. My sons have their own lives now. They made that painfully clear. So, I decided I was going to honor their wish. and spend whatever time I have left loving the person who actually earned it. By sunrise, I was locked in, and James Mitchell, locked in and defending his wife, is not a man you want on the other end of a phone call. I called my lawyer, Paul Harris. At 8:20 in the morning, I need you to pull my name as the guarantor from Alex's lease. I told him, today, before the renewal deadline hits. There was a pause on the line. Are you sure? James, once that lease expires without your backing, the system is going to flag him automatically. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I replied, by 9:15, the paperwork was filed. The deadline hit at midnight without my signature. For the first time in 2 years, there was no James Mitchell acting as the invisible steel beam holding up that luxury apartment. I didn't hear a word for 2 days. The exact same silence that had almost destroyed me a week earlier now felt like the most peaceful 48 hours I had experienced in months. The phone rang on a Thursday afternoon. It was Alex. Dad, there is a glitch with the lease. The property manager is saying the renewal didn't process. Because there is no guarantor, they just handed us a notice to vacate, and they are hitting us with a penalty fee that doubles the rent until we are out. There is no glitch? So, I said. My voice was completely calm, almost gentle. I pulled my cosign 2 days ago. What, Dad? Why would you do that? You know, I don't qualify with my income alone yet. If they file a formal eviction, it goes on my record. My credit will be destroyed. Chloe and I won't be able to rent a garage in this city. You told me to stay in my lane? I replied, so, I am staying in my lane. They didn't wait for the sheriff to kick them out. They packed in a frantic 48 hours, hauling their stuff in black trash bags down the elevator on a luggage cart, walking right through the exact same luxury lobby where, 2 weeks prior, they told their mother she was ruining their engagement party. There is a very quiet clarity in watching natural consequences arrive at a door that your signature kept open for way too long. But I didn't stop there. I went through every single financial thread connecting me to them. I pulled my guarantee on Danny's business credit line. The bank froze the entire account. I did the exact same thing to Danny's car loan. I stepped entirely into the shadows and let the financial institutions show my sons exactly what they were worth without my name attached to theirs. 3 weeks later, they showed up on our porch in Chicago. Miami had chewed them up and spit them out the second my safety net vanished. They pulled up in a yellow rental box truck, looking like absolute ghosts. Alex was crying before he even crossed the threshold. How could you do this to us? We are your family. You are ruining our lives over one stupid argument. A stupid argument, I asked, my face completely blank. You boys watched us call you for 3 days straight, knowing we were sick with worry, and you intentionally ignored us to teach me a lesson. Well, now the real world is teaching you. 1. Sarah stepped out of the kitchen. Her voice was firm and completely at peace. Your father and I are on the exact same page. We decided together to honor your request. We are leaving you alone. They drove away that same night. And when the front door clicked shut, for the first time in weeks, the silence in our home didn't feel like mourning. It felt like peace. A few weeks later, I went back to Paul's office. I want to rewrite the will entirely. I told him, if anything happens to Sarah and me, every single asset goes to foundations that provide scholarships for the children of fallen military personnel. Not a single dollar goes to the boys. My own father was taken from me by a deployment that didn't end the way it should have. I spent my whole life thinking that by giving my kids everything I missed out on, I could shield them from that pain. Instead, I raised 2 sons who took a father who loved them completely for granted. My boys have their own lives now. They made that perfectly clear at a door in Miami. Sarah and I have each other, and it turns out that is more than enough. If you enjoyed this story, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. Let me know where you are watching from. I will see you in the next one. Yeah,